this is a discussion that I wanted to have because I started out my tweet saying, yeah, this is at Rattlesnake Text, not at Chairgatin. So this is just my personal one. I didn't dare do this
Free shout out.
Yeah, didn't dare do this one to the podcast, but I said, yeah, I want to see a tweet get ratioed. I actually agree with McNabb. Race car drivers aren't athletes, and I think everyone in the racing community disagrees with me. I don't think many people like this opinion.
Subject.
Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, what year was that? That was a while ago.
So it was when wasn't it when ESPN?
I think it was when Jimmy Johnson won his last championship. Okay. I want to say it was around that time.
Yeah.
Because ESPN was having the discussion top 10 athletes of this decade.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know what it was. It was when Donovan McNabb, when Speed TV or Speed Channel went to FS1, I think. Okay. And they had that news show with McNabb, and he called NASCAR out for the athlete thing. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so they were going around the people that were having this discussion, and to Donovan McNabb's credit, he got so much heat for this, but he did rank Jimmy Johnson as the top 3 and number 3 athlete of the decade. Number 3. That's really high. We've had incredible athletes in this decade, or maybe it's the last one now, I guess. Yeah. He put him at number 3, but he said he wanted to specify that Jimmy Johnson is not an athlete, although he will rank him because it's a sport he's competing in, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. He's not technically an athlete, and people did not like this. So what's your take?
You know what? I kind of sided with you.
I make it a good argument.
Yeah. Nowadays, I feel like all drivers are in shape. But I know a lot of people responded to you with that reply, and you had the perfect reply with, I can get in shape. You can get in shape. Be just as good as shape as Jimmy Johnson was or any of these drivers nowadays.
I could get in better shape than them. Doesn't make me an athlete.
If I'm one of the top athletes in the world, I know the conditions they have to go through. It's hot in the car. It's 130 degrees, 140 degrees. You're in the car for 4 hours. But, Tony Stewart won a lot of races, and he wasn't an athlete.
And I brought up golf, too. Like, I was like, I don't consider them athletes either, although a lot of them are very fit, they work out a lot.
Yeah. But there's still guys on the tour. Like
John Daly was winning.
Yeah. They got beer guts.
Guy smoke a cig while doing it with a beer gut, alcoholic. Sad story.
And then you have your freak athletes like when Tiger Woods came along. Jordan Spieth right now. They are fit,
It's actually a pretty good point. That I don't agree that older drivers were more like athletes, but cars are easier to handle today, which is an interesting point also.
And
that just goes to show, look at those old drivers. Those guys were not athletes.
No.
Those guys were coal miners.
Strong as hell. But
they were badass dudes. Like, I wouldn't want to fuck with them in a bar fight.
Yeah.
But
they were your 9 to 5. They were your 4 a.m. to 4 o'clock workers at your local. They're blue collar,
And so the best arguments are the drivers work out, so they're in good shape, and that they have to endure a lot mentally and physically while driving for that long. And, my argument back to that, which you already mentioned about getting in shape, doesn't make you an athlete, in my opinion. Number 2, fighter jet pilots. Do we consider them athletes?
I wouldn't.
Because they endure more physically and mentally while they're flying than these race car drivers do. Yeah. I see them as kind of similar, You're having to handle this incredible piece of machinery, which is very impressive. And I'm not taking that away from you. But I don't think that makes you an athlete.
No. And when you compare, I don't know. I'm a big Titans fan. Compare Ryan Blaney or Chase Elliott to Derrick Henry.
So here we go. This is the question. And I'm glad someone mentioned this because what defines an athlete? And this is what shapes the entire argument and anyone's opinion on the argument. So, for instance, I side with what Donovan McNabb said, that he ranked him as a top 10 athlete only because they were using the definition athlete in the sense that anyone that competes in a sport. And so if we're going off that definition, I consider, NASCAR is not a sport, whatever, stock car racing. I consider that a sport. I consider, racing a sport, just like I consider golf a sport, consider a lot of things a sport that I don't think require athletes. But if we're going to say an athlete is simply defined as someone that competes in a sport, then sure, they're all athletes. I don't define it like that. I define it as someone that has to physically dominate their opponents to get a victory. And I don't think, although obviously NASCAR requires you to physically handle the car, if my car's faster than yours, at the end of the day, I have a better chance of winning. You know what I mean? You take two guys that are equally talented in racing, equally in shape. One has a faster car than the other. More than likely, he's going to win the race unless something happens.
There's a variable attached to each driver. Yeah.
Right. And so also, I define as athleticism as something you're born with. I could grow up with a dad that wanted me to race and had me practice every day, put me in good equipment, and I could be an incredible NASCAR driver if that was my life. There's nothing that separates me from any of those other guys. I've seen some of those other guys. If anything, that's not a concern. What I couldn't do is if I practiced my entire life to play in the NBA, I don't think I'd ever play in the NBA. I'm maybe 5'10", being generous. I don't have ups. Like, I'm not born with that.
You're not going to succeed.
So I kind of consider it as those two things. It's a born with ability and something that you have to physically do to dominate your opponent. In that sense, in my opinion, NASCAR drivers aren't athletes.
I mean, I don't know who could disagree with you.
A lot of people.
With the category that you defined an athlete in. Like you said, if athletes are all considered as somebody in a sport, then NASCAR drivers would be considered athletes. I don't have any argument with you, to be honest. I told you earlier today that I might have something that could give them some ammo, but I don't. But nowadays,
here's my best argument. And is that guy an athlete? Because that guy won a shit ton of NASCAR races.
Yeah, and a few championships.
He's a championship NASCAR driver. Is he an athlete? Let's be real.
Yeah. Smoke's diet wasn't the best.
I mean, I love it. If I could live that life, that's my dream life. That's awesome. So I'm not taking anything away, but this another champion, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of LeBron, but look at that guy. That guy's an athlete. Yeah. You look at him and you say that guy's an athlete. If he didn't play a sport, people would be surprised. Yeah. If you saw him walking down the street and he's like, "No, I don't play any sports, yada yada yada," I'd be like, "Why not?" Yeah. You are born to play sports, dude. Come on. If you see Tony Stewart walking on the street, you don't know who he is. He's a normal guy. He's just a normal guy.
And 99% of NASCAR drivers are.
Yeah.
And you can say the same thing about golf, but
it's a good question here. Are linemen athletes? I'd have to know more about linemen. I was never a lineman in football. That's a tough one. But I will say they physically dominate their opponent. They don't without using special equipment. So I have to give it to them. But they do have to be born big. They also have to be surprisingly fast for the size they are. So
when you're 350 pounds, you run a sub 5,
right.
4.9s, 4.8s right now for defensive linemen. Offensive linemen are a little bit slower, but
I mean, so I think I'd have to go linemen, athletes. Yeah, pretty much anybody playing football is an athlete. Kicker, maybe we get away from that one.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I don't know. That's my take. I'd love for more people to have a good argument against it, but
it's it all depends what you kind of categorize NASCAR. You know, if you think they're a sport, and if you think all sports they have athletes, then yeah, NASCAR drivers they're right up there with LeBron, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that's the best argument is, you know, Jimmy Johnson is the greatest NASCAR driver still alive, right? Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
yes,
just championship wise. Well, I guess Richard Petty's still alive. I keep forgetting about that guy.
with the talent that Jimmy had to go through, I think I feel like his championships were harder than Richard. So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Either way, we could look at both of them for the sake of my argument. I don't care. Really, you could look at any NASCAR driver in the history of NASCAR, and my argument's going to hold up. You look at any of those guys that are champions of the sport and compare them to champions of like any other sport that without equipment, just a physical sport. One looks like an athlete, one doesn't. And, you know, that's at the end of the day, I think that's it.